too. Peter Anderson joins us, founder at Anderson Capital Management. He's been in cyber trades, he's been in AI and some big tech trades. But last time we spoke, Peter, you were thinking maybe this is all a little bit too much, too fast. Maybe we're giving control over to the robots. What do you think about this $500 billion from this Stargate plan?
Very, very impressive. And you know what I find interesting is trying to be neutral politically when you answer these questions is getting more and more challenging. I've noticed that some are reporting on this extensively while others are merely doing a drive-by. So I think that's going to be the sign of the times, at least for this next, say, 6 months or so, where if you're asking people's opinions on certain activities, you almost have to ask what their political affiliation is, because it is so difficult right now to separate those two. So trying to be neutral on this question, I would say it's very promising. However, it's still, no matter how much money you throw at this, let's just keep our expectations in control. I don't think it's going to cure cancer. It might give us some additional insights. And of course, I tend to think of this more as accelerated computational muscle rather than an exploration of the human brain and trying to replicate how the brain works.
Okay, so as we look at the money coming in, though, I mean, is that something that as investors we want to try and avoid maybe what might be our own kind of like fear about the tech? I mean, like, you know, I'm a crypto cynic, but I try to go with the charts, even though I may not believe the underlying thing has much value. You know, if it breaks out, it breaks out. Or if a guy runs for president saying he's going to buy a bunch of it, then that, you know, I'm not going to short it.
Exactly. But, you know, you bring up an interesting point, because how much do you do the so-called, you know, beauty contest where I think it was Warren Buffett that said you vote for the person that you think everybody else is going to say is the most attractive rather than the talent and skills of the person. So that's an excellent example with crypto. You know, how long do you go with the flow, so to speak, when internally you're saying, I know I don't want to put my hand in, keep this hand in the fire too long, and when do I pull it out? Of course, that's always the big question with speculation, is how long do you stay in? And as we know, you can get tremendously burned if you cannot time that correctly, and most of us are horrible at timing things like that.
Okay. So, Peter, if we're going to steer clear from some of that particular market timing, should we just stick with our index positions then at this point? Should we let the free markets move that capital up as they deem fit?
Well, you know, I'm a stock picker at heart, so I would resoundingly say that we should always, if you want to invest in an index, that's fine for a foundation, but most of us want to look for a little bit extra octane. So stock picking, of course, is the way to do that. I would say that what has changed between the last time I spoke with you, which I guess was in December now, is that, of course, we have a new chief in control. And what we have to do is separate what he says versus what he actually does. And we are in the early innings of this. I mean, it's only been a couple of days, right? And already we're seeing tremendous upsets to the market in terms of everything he has been saying. After some time passes, I think we'll get a clearer roadmap of his intentions, and then that's an easier time to pick stocks. But I would advise for this period, at least, we're in the middle of a massive rollout, and it's extremely hard to pick a direction to get your compass oriented until you get a better sense of what his ultimate goals are.
Okay. So looking at those ultimate goals, Peter, how important is the tariff stuff? I mean, the market's kind of doing this back and forth. Did history from Trump 1.0 tell us that tariffs were a massive impact on markets? I mean, I remember us pretty grinding steady higher, vol going down eventually. Yes.
So if we can think 8 years ago, And boy, you look back then and you say tariffs were our only thing that we were fretting about. I mean, think how that has changed since 8 years ago. But I actually wish we were back to that, because it was at least easier to corral what the risks were. And of course, it was tariffs. However, as you said, I speak my mind, so I will say this, and I don't know if anybody else is going to say this, but in terms of how we can predict how tariffs are going to impact the general economy, the world economy, and markets is anyone's guess. Sure, you can ask 5 economists and you're going to get 5 different answers. If you just Google, are tariffs inflationary or not, you're going to get 50% saying they are and 50% saying they're not. So what do we do instead? I'm a student of physics, right? Physics is experimenting. And so I would say the only way we're going to know for certain how this plays out is he's going to have to levy some tariffs, and in real time, we're going to see how that plays out. There is no, you can throw all the math you want at this and you can get any answer you want. The economists are well employed, and they are going to be, queried on this for many, many interviews. But I would tell you this, take their answers with a grain of salt, because they are purely speculating.
Okay. The speculation element, Peter, how scary are valuations? Do you feel they're in need of severe correction? We're high, obviously, but we're still below the COVID mania. We're below .com, but those are not great standards to be comparing to.
Sure, not great standards, but I would say this. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say this is a wonderful time to invest in equities. In my entire career, when you're counseling private clients, most of them come out with this opening statement: should I invest now? Everything seems so high. The prices seem so high. So I would say this: you just have to hold your nose and buy equities when you think you found companies that conform to your standards and your process of identifying names. So to that end, I'm not at all concerned about valuations at this point. Crypto is a totally different issue, as you mentioned earlier. But in terms of fundamental equities, I still think cybersecurity is a marvelous sector to invest in, mainly because there is no replacement for it, and I don't see anything in the future. Certainly there are some stocks on a PE basis that are high valued, and I tend to stay away from those. But in general, I don't think the market is completely overvalued.
Okay. Peter, tell me what does present value. Where do you think there's still juice to be squeezed that hasn't already? We got a big pop in the Russell yesterday. It seemed like the market's kind of trying to do rotation the past week.
Yeah. Talk about rotation. That isn't my thing. I tend to look at individual stocks. I don't really believe that there is a groupthink out there that is saying, okay, we've had it with large cap and we're going to rotate into mid or small. Instead, I'll give you a simple example that I'm so positive on, and it's my top holding in the portfolio. It's a company called Insulet. The ticker is PODD. And in our opinion, this company is poised to increase steadily in value. It is a diabetic instrumentation company, a patch that you put on your arm that automatically distributes insulin. And we think that that market, of course, is a growing market, but also recently Insulet has been approved in 5 other European companies. So while everybody's fretting about AI and is 500 billion, the way to go, I will tell you this: a company like Insulet is slowly growing its market. It is not in the headlines, but it is in an indispensable application, and there's no competition. So names like that are frankly a gift to me, because they're simpler to understand. I don't have to speculate about the population of diabetics. It's all hard numbers that you can easily interpret.
All right, I like that. Healthcare and medicine as a group seems to find its way repeatedly into the value cohort, but we also saw that some of those big weight loss companies declined, so maybe some of that market cap that was in all the Ozempic stuff can find its way into stuff like you're talking about.
Yeah, perhaps it will. And of course, there's always been this debate, will type 2 diabetes be lessened because of the weight loss drugs, and should that impact a company like Insulet? So you can argue that, but in general, the numbers are in the favor of sadly increasing type 2 diabetes, actually. And so we've also seen data that once you go off those weight loss drugs, you tend to regain your weight, sadly. So those are all, although they're negative for the patient, they're positive in this case for a company like Insulet.
All right. Peter, thanks for the chat. Fine to catch up. Thank you very much. Peter Anderson, founder of Anderson Capital Management.